Gerber Propel A. Let's see how thin it is. Gerber on the pocket clip. Now you may notice that it's an AO, but I did not have it spring activated. That's because as soon as I got the knife, I did what I think any sane person would do with a torsion spring. I removed it. The reason I removed it is it makes the knife very difficult to open, and besides that, it takes away from it an excellent feature, which is the button lock. Here you can see inside where the button is. To press the button moves the plunger out of the way of the tang so that the knife can then close. Slides closed like that, and then once the tang cutout comes into position, the plunge moves back forward, holding the knife in place. As an AO, it does come with a safety, which I highly recommend. Any knife that's spring activated, if it doesn't have a safety on it or isn't extremely hard to open, don't buy it. It's just not safe. However, it's also handy when you have it in the manual mode. With that lock engaged, the knife can only open that much, so the tip can't really catch on things too easily. When it's closed, the tip is well hidden within the scales. Remove the lock, pop it open, re-engage the lock. The button cannot be depressed. See? So that you can never accidentally disengage the lock. Now, without the spring in there, the blade is extremely loose on its washers, just falls closed. This makes it easier than an axis lock to open and close. Has the steel glass breaker, which is incorporated into the spine of the knife and held in place by all of those screws. So it's very firmly held in place for the structure of the knife. These are G10 scales with nested steel linings. They aren't in any way skeletonized or hollowed out, so the knife is heavier than it needs to be, but I guess you could say it's still stronger. And with those screws penetrating all the way through into those steel liners, holding this steel glass breaker in place, it is very firm, like a fixed blade. It's well held to those G10 liners, or G10 scales. These thumb studs may seem somewhat large, especially for the size of the blade. However, they make it very easy to, they stand a little bit proud of the scales, so it's very easy to open this knife, even with gloves. By the way, a quick plug, or rather anti-plug, these are ironclad Ranchworks gloves. If you're getting these, don't expect to do too much hard labor with them. They do not hold up. The leather is just too thin on the palm and on the fingers. So if you're going to get an ironclad glove and you need it for doing a lot of hard labor on abrasive materials like rope and wood, these are not your gloves. Alright. However, the thumb is still intact, so I'll show you that it's very easy to engage and disengage the lock and to get those thumb studs. To flick the knife open and closed, also, you could just do that. Excellent knife, excellent lock. I don't know if the lock will be as sturdy over time as an axis lock, but that's a lot of metal that's against that tang. Once again, I'll turn on the light so you can see. Let me see if we can actually see how much of the tang is caught on it. There you go, you can see it pop in place. So that's very solid. Should be very durable, but I haven't exactly stress tested this lock to find out whether or not it can handle it. Alright, in comparison, here is a Benchmade 520 SBK. Aluminum scales, nice thick back spacer there. I love these scales, by the way. Some people complain they tear up your pockets. Well, I guess you could use a sheath or just get better pants. Axis bar that comes way back to get it open, very strong, yet the blade comes out very smooth. Ambidextrous, which the button lock is not, unless of course you're going to use your index finger for disengaging it, which I guess you could do. These thumb studs do not stand as proud of the scales, so it's much harder to open this with the gloves on. I don't know if you just noticed that. The blade flicks out very easily and flicks closed pretty easily, but it is a little harder to get this to close, because you have to pull that spring way back and keep it way back with either your thumb or your index finger and hold it back against that pressure so that it doesn't engage the tang early and slow the knife down. With this knife, it's not a problem. You just push that in and the blade, I mean, you can catch it if you let go of that button, but all you're doing is holding the button down and it slides right into place. Very nice. Other things to compare about these two knives: the thickness of the blade stock. You notice that the Benchmade is a little bit thicker blade stock than the Gerber. This is 154 cm steel. You can get this in M4 as well as a special edition, CPM M4. This is 420 HC, although there's also the S30V edition. The pivot pins are about the same size. Maybe, there you go. Pillar might be a little larger, but that's probably just the face of the pillar for the Gerber. You'll notice also in the Gerber you can see the brass inside the scales for when you want to rearrange, if you want to rearrange the pocket clip. Those will go right into the nested steel liners, so that pocket clip is not going to be loose on you. This is designed as a tactical knife, which is why it has the tanto blade for piercing. However, it is a drop point tanto blade with the swedge taken out of the top very nicely, that ends right where you would put your thumb, so it's very easy to put a lot of thumb pressure down on the base of the blade. There's a lot of serrations on the base of the blade for cutting through strapping and cord. Again, this is made for tactical purposes. I guess that means military, law enforcement, emergency services. Not me. But I still like it, and I know that if I don't want it to be a tanto blade, I can obviously grind this down into a rounded point, tapered point. The serrations, while you may not like the serrations on these knives, they by no means impede you from carving. The G10 scales are very grippy, very nice. This is a little too grippy for some people. I really like these scales. I don't think they're a problem at all. But what these scales have that the others don't, or rather don't have that the others do, is this smooth back in the rounded shape that fits nicely into the pocket of your hand. Because it's a little wider in its profile, it fills your hand a little more nicely. And without any sort of jimping here on the spine, it doesn't dig into the palm of your hand. So barehanded, this is a much more comfortable knife than this one is. These little grooves, while they are good for traction if you're wearing gloves, they can become painful if you're putting a little too much stress on it with the knife in your hand. Also located here in the front where your fingers would be. Another thing about this knife is that while I really like the shape of it, it reminds me of the Yari's, the Yari 2, and also I think the new Gerber Combat Fixed Blade. It's a very comfortable handle shape. However, it doesn't curve to fit your hand quite the way the Benchmade does, and it's not quite as thick, a little bit thinner. But beyond that, this pocket clip. This is a very differently designed pocket clip to my mind. The metal's a little different. It has a little bit more spring to it and vibrates a little bit more, but it's positioned a little bit wrong when you put it in the tip-up position. In order to grab it and hold on to it, it brings your hand a little bit lower down on the blade than you might want. I like to keep my hand up here so that my thumb rides right along where the ricasso would be at the top of the handle, under the guard area, and unfortunately that puts the pocket clip right into my hand. Not very comfortable. I'd prefer to have it around the sides of the pads, and so it ends up shifting backward on my hand. Compared to this knife, where the pocket clip rounds down like this, has this lift-up shape. This fits very easily into my fingers, into whichever finger I want. Usually it goes on the ring finger, lays against the ring finger in my hand, or against the pad just below the ring finger. Very comfortable, does not create any hot spots in use. This is a more comfortable handle. Nicer steel on the blade, the 154 cm. If you're looking for edge retention, I think 420 HC is probably a little bit tougher, a little less edge retention, probably a little easier to sharpen. So I guess you can take what you want from that. This is a $120 knife approximately, maybe more than that, for getting that 154 cm and the aluminum. Whereas this is G10 with the nested steel liners. This one doesn't have nested liners, but the liners are skeletonized. I don't know if you probably can't see that. This one cost about $90. I'm hoping that they'll come out with a non-assisted opening one and maybe bring down the price a bit, closer to $60. then this would be an incredible steel of a knife, especially for made in the USA, which it proudly displays here, Portland, Oregon, 420 HC. Also, they'll probably come out with a drop point version that is not tanto and doesn't have serrations for everybody else who's interested. But this was being marketed as a tactical blade, so, you know, the black blade, so it's non-glare, except on the very edge. The harsh G10, etc., the tanto blade, the serrations, that all fits in with the current paradigm of what is tactical. So there you go. It's a really great knife. I enjoy using this because it opens so easily and closes so easily, especially with gloves. Actuating that lock is so simple that this has become my go-to work knife out on the land here when I need a blade and don't need it to be a fixed blade, or I'm not wearing a fixed blade. This is what I turn to. It has replaced this for me. It has also replaced the Cold Steel Recon 1, which also has G10 scales, has I think it's an Aus 8 steel blade, tanto with serrations, so this is a little similar. This is a little bit larger blade, but I prefer the serrations on the Gerber to these ones. These ones tend to fill up more quickly with wood and detritus material that you're cutting, so you have to keep them clean more often, otherwise they don't cut at all. And also this, so while the lock, the triad lock, is an excellent lock to have, the thumb stud on this doesn't stand quite as proud as the Gerber does, so it's harder to get the blade open in the first place. The lock is easy to actuate, even with gloves on, but not as easy as the Gerber, because it doesn't flip closed the way the Gerber does. And the handle, while it fits excellent in your hand and locks into place, is only comfortable in this position, or in a back position, if you're going to be doing some sort of light chopping with this tiny, extremely lightweight blade. If you flip it around like this into your hand, it sort of is digging in with those finger grooves. Not very comfortable compared to the Gerber, where the groove that's there is very subdued, so it fits very comfortably in your hand in just about any position that you can hold it. So I'll back up a little more so you can see. So, very comfortable blade, very comfortable handle, very easy to use, very easy to actuate, gloves on or not. Benchmade, as I said, has the most comfortable handle of any of them. No grooves in it other than the general hand groove of the handle itself with the excellent dropped heel. Between this and the Gerber, I do prefer the Gerber just because of the lock. The locking mechanism is easier on the Gerber than it is on the Benchmade. And it's a less expensive knife. 420 HC is no steel to scoff at for general use. If you're doing a lot of cutting of abrasive material, okay, you're going to want to step up the steel. 154 cm then is probably not enough for you. You're probably going to want to work your way up to CPM M4. But for the rest of us, 420 HC, American-made steel, American-made knife, at a reasonable price, hard to beat. Thanks for watching.